The Senate will come back to order. Hope everybody had a good lunch. Senate will come back to order. Senate Bill 437. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 437, a bill by Senator Robertson of the 29th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title II of the OCGA relating to agriculture, so as to authorize the Department of Agriculture to enforce certain criminal laws to regulate consumable hemp products and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Cowser of the 46th District Chairman. The Senate Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 437, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title II of the OCGA relating to agriculture, so as to authorize the Department of Agriculture to enforce certain criminal laws, to regulate consumable hemp products, to provide for definitions, and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from 29th.
Fellow senators, I don't think it comes as a surprise to anyone in this chamber what my feelings are about marijuana, consumable hemp, and cannabis are. I have seen the destruction of this plant on humanity up close, but the train has left the station, and I think it's our responsibility to make sure that if this product's out there, that it's safe. So what SB 437 does is it requires, first of all, it defines consumable hemp as a hemp product intended to be ingested, absorbed, or inhaled by humans or animals. What this legislation does, it requires testing and content labeling on consumable hemp products. It requires that certain labels require on the packaging bearing warning stickers that these products contain THC and the dangers of that. It also allows the Department of Ag to have some enforceability where they're able to go in and pull products out that do not comply with this legislation and destroy those products. And to go back to the testing really quick, the testing must be done by an independent lab that is not affiliated with the producer. And it also limits sales of consumable hemp to individuals under the age of 21. There is a little bit of cleanup language in this bill, but Mr. President, I will yield to any questions.
You do have one question, Senators. Recognize the senator from the second.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the senator yield?
I do.
Senator, could you explain your feelings to me about hemp and marijuana? I have not been in the Senate but a short time, and I am uncertain of those feelings, and I was hoping that you may be able to share them with me, as I am shocked that the senator from the 29th has feelings, so I would like to really know what those feelings are.
Yes, sir. It's probably best if we do that offline, Senator, if you're comfortable with that, because the my choice of language in the well is much different than my choice of language outside the well. But I would like to thank the chairman of Regulated Industries for the work that he put in on this legislation also to perfect it. And I think to get to the point, because many times in the past this legislation has been hijacked in an attempt to make a consumable hemp product something that it was not. But I do appreciate the inquiry from my good friend from Savannah. Mr. President, if no more questions, I will yield the well.
Yeah, you have no more questions.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Does any other senator wish to speak? Oh, I'm sorry, senator from 33rd. Did you have a question? Here, y'all can ask each other right there.
It's a quick question. Do you smoke filtered menthol or hemp?
Senator. No. If you have a real question, grab him right there. So, right. Does any senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Questions on the adoption of the committee substitute? Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none, the report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none, the main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. All opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 49, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Secretary will read caption for Senate Bill 490.
Senate Bill 490, a bill by Senator Cowser of the 46th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 40 of the OCGA relating to motor vehicles and traffic, so as to provide for the felony offense of fleeing or attempting to elude a police officer and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Public Safety recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Albers of the 56th District Chairman. The Senate Committee on Public Safety offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 490, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 40 of the OCGA relating to motor vehicles and traffic, so as to revise penalties for the offense of fleeing or attempting to elude a police officer and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize Senator from 46.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, this is a bill to address the problem of attempting to elude police officers or fleeing from police officers in marked cars making a regular stop. It just increases the penalties to a high and aggravated misdemeanor on your early offenses and then a felony in subsequent offenses. I would request your favorable support. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objections to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Questions on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. All opposed nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. Harold. He's had Larry James. Hey, did you On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 52, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Secretary Reed, caption for Senate Bill 502.
Senate Bill 502, a bill by Senator Dixon of the 45th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 1 of Article 3 of Chapter 5 of Title 50 of the OCGA relating to general authority, duties, and procedure of the Department of Administrative Services so as to prohibit state agencies from contracting for advertising or marketing services with certain companies or for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Kauser of the 46th District Chairman. The Senate Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 502, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 1 of Article 3 of Chapter 5 of Title 50 of the OCGA relating to general authority, duties, and procedure of the Department of Administrative Services so as to prohibit state agencies from contracting for advertising or marketing services and for other purposes. Senator Dixon of the 45th offers the following amendment. 1, to amend the substitute to Senate Bill 502 by replacing on line 23 ratings with monitoring and for other purposes. Additionally, Senator Anna Vitarte of the 31st and others offer the following amendment 2 to amend Senate Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities substitute to Senate Bill 502 by inserting after as on line 3 the following: to expand a prohibition on certain companies bidding on or submitting a proposal for a state contract to include all companies owned or operated by foreign adversaries by replacing on line 11 with the following. That completes the order, Mr. President. Oh, additionally, a minority report has been filed. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from the 45th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate colleagues, I bring before you a bill that I'm calling the First Amendment Preservation Act. Over the last 4 years, the First Amendment has seen its share of challenges. It's been seen in the Twitter files. Independent journalists found that the federal government colluded with social media companies to censor news and manipulate public opinion. We all remember the censorship that culminated with the New York Post being locked out of its Twitter account for reporting the contents of Hunter Biden's laptop. This story was called Russian Disinformation that was intended to manipulate the outcome of the 2020 election. In the wake of the 2020 election and the COVID-19 pandemic, with seed funding from the United States government, Another form of censorship emerged recently, being so-called media monitoring services. I can't talk. These media monitoring services create blacklists of publishers that do not fit their preferred narrative and work to steer advertising dollars away from disfavored outlets. One such company is Global Disinformation Index. Another media monitoring service is NewsGuard that rates news websites for their accuracy, reliability, and analyzed by media research centers. As state legislators, we aren't here to assess the constitutionality of media monitoring services or decide whether advertising should be crafted to gear towards one certain national conversation. But we are charged with being good stewards of Georgia taxpayer dollars, and if the message from the state of Georgia is important enough to merit advertising, is important enough to distribute to all citizens within the state of Georgia without regard of their political viewpoint. And that's all that Senate Bill 502 does. It simply requires state agencies purchasing advertising with taxpayer dollars here in the state of Georgia to require the advertising agencies to hire a certified that they do not use one of these blacklist created companies or media monitoring services. Regardless of whether you read the Huffington Post or the Daily Wire or watch MSNBC or Newsmax, government purchased advertising should have the same chance of reaching all of you. This is good common sense policy for the state of Georgia, and I hope all of you vote favorably for this legislation. With that, Mr. President, I'd be happy to answer any questions, or we'll yield the well.
You have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Senator, did you speak to your amendment? Why don't you come on back over here and speak to your amendment real quick?
Thank you, Mr. President. Amendment 1 is just clarification language on just kind of more detail on how the advertising would be done with audio or digitally or through broadcasting services. And then it just goes into more detail on what media monitoring organizations are. And then Amendment 2, it's a friendly amendment, but I'll let the author of that amendment speak to that.
All right. No questions, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from 31st, is this the Amendment 2? Is that you? Okay. Recognize Senator from 31st. Speak to his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Since 1979, the Iranian Revolution is the Islamic Republic of Iran has worked against the United States and Western allied nations in the Middle East to establish a sphere of influence in the region. These efforts have led to many international incidents, such as the Iran hostage crisis, the Iran-Iraq war, and the funding of terrorist and militant groups in the region. Because of their support of terrorist activities in the Middle East and other adversarial actions taken against the United States, the Islamic Republic of Iran has been designated since 1984 as a state sponsor of terrorism by the United States State Department and is additionally labeled by the U.S. Department of Commerce as a foreign adversary in the United States. This amendment basically is forbidding the contract with Iran, and we also included other adversarial countries such as North Korea, Russia, and the Maduro regime in Venezuela to basically send a message that Georgia will not do business with any of these countries as long as they continue to attack the United States and our allies. With that, Mr. President, I yield the well.
Does any other senator wish to rise to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. Okay, so we're on to Amendment 1, authored by the senator from the 45th, who is the author of the underlying bill. Is there objection? Without objection, Amendment. All right, apparently there's a minority report I wasn't aware of. The minority report was read. Does anybody from the minority party like to speak on behalf? So no? Okay, they're waving, all right. All right, so now let's do Amendment 1 again. Amendment 1, is there objection? No objection, Amendment 1 is added. Amendment 2, authored by the senator from the 31st. Is there objection to Amendment 2? Without objection, Amendment 2 is added. Questions on the adoption of the committee substitute as amended. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute as amended? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none, the report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none, the main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor vote yea, opposed nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 34, the nays are 19. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Secretary, read the caption for SB 543.
Senate Bill 543, a bill by Senator Brass of the 28th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 2 of Article 2 of Chapter 12 of Title 16 of the OCGA relating to bingo, so as to change certain provisions relating to bingo games operated by nonprofit tax-exempt organizations and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Economic Development and Tourism recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Beach of the 21st District Chairman. The Senate Committee on Economic Development and Tourism offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 543. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 2 of Article 2 of Chapter 12 of Title 16 of the OCGA relating to bingo, so as to provide for the operation of bingo games by certain nonprofit tax-exempt organizations and local governments and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the Rules Chairman to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Gives me great honor to stand before you to present SB 543, also known as the Bingo Bill. And all we're doing here is we're updating code that is long overdue. We regulate bingo and have for many years, but we've changed nothing through the years. And that's simply what this bill does. We're updating our code. We're increasing the allowed payout. And we are not increasing the cap on how many times bingo can be played in a month, but we are going to increase it on how many times it can take place in the same place on a single day. Because currently they are capped at 1 per day, and we're simply taking it to 2. And that was the underlying bill. And then in the wisdom of the committee, and it was brought to my attention that there's a county, little rural, poor county in southeast Georgia that has 100,000 acres taken off their property tax digest. Think about that, 100,000 acres in a rural county that cannot collect property tax due to the federal government. And so we are simply giving them a way to get back some money. And that's all this bill does. I will yield for questions.
You do have a couple questions, Senator. Senator from the 14th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
I yield.
Senator, would you agree that when assessing SB 543 that it's important context to understand what a highly impacted tax district is before voting on the bill?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's all I want to know. Thanks, Senator.
You talking about for you or me?
Recognize the senator from the 29th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
Absolutely.
Senator, is it not true that this bingo bill has absolutely nothing to do with sports betting or any other type of gambling, that this is just reserved for nonprofits?
That is absolutely true. So
Thank you.
Your veterans groups, and other great nonprofits out there.
Recognize the senator from the 26th.
Oh, yeah. I yield.
Cinnamon Yield.
Of course.
Isn't it true?
Yes.
You got my blessings on this one.
Yes.
Recognize
You're a great
the senator,
American.
Recognize the senator from the 27th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chairman Yield.
Absolutely.
Thank you for bringing this important piece of legislation. I do have just one question for you. Hypothetically, if there was a farmer and he had a dog, what would his name be?
Well, there's Ralph, there's Bow Wow, there's Little Bow Wow, but then there's B-I-N-G-O.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And Bingo was his name-o.
Recognize the senator from the 50th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does Senator Yield?
Absolutely.
Is it true that there are crossover bingo games that are happening right now that may be being played in the hall?
Crossover bingo games in the hall. I'm not aware of those.
You're not aware? Well, if that was true, are you aware if there's a physical note with this?
There's currently no physical note. There's not a fiscal note either. There's no state
Senator
money
from the
involved in
25th.
this transactions.
The gentleman yield.
We can't gamble state funding. I yield for my good friend from
You know,
25th.
yes, sir. When you hear the 85-year-old person scream a bad word, is it because somebody else has hollered bingo?
My good friend, I've never heard you say a bad word.
Okay, thank you.
Senator from the 3rd.
Will the chairman yield, please?
I certainly will. To my good friend from this area that this impacts.
Isn't it true, Mr. Chairman, that in all counties, children have to be educated, roads have to be built, counties have to be run, and they even have even has to happen in counties that have 100,000 acres on which they do not collect taxes?
Absolutely,
Thank you.
and property tax is a big reason on why that funding is there, and they obviously don't have it.
All right, Senator, you can yield the well.
Mr. President, I was just getting started. So
I understand. That's
No,
why I
I'm
want
kidding.
you to
I'll
yield.
yield the well.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection for the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Questions on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. All opposed nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Bingo brass. Secretary read SB 547.
Senate Bill 547, a bill by Senator Beach of the 21st and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 4018 of the OCGA relating to safe operations of motor carriers, commercial motor vehicles, and drivers, and safe transportation of hazardous materials, so as to update the reference date to federal regulations and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Economic Development and Tourism recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Beach of the 21st District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from the 21st.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I bring before you Senate Bill 547. All this does is update the reference to federal regulations related to the safe operation of motor carriers and commercial motor vehicles of this year, 2024. That's all this does, and I would ask for your favorable consideration. And, Mr. President, if I don't have questions, I will yield the well. No?
No question.
All right, thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 52, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Secretary read Senate Bill 542.
Senate Bill 542, a bill by Senator Watson of the 11th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 8 of Title 4040 of the OCGA relating to water rights, so as to remove references to the public trust doctrine and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Natural Resources and the Environment recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Anderson of the 24th District Chairman. The Senate Committee on Natural Resources and the Environment offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 542. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 8 of Title 44 of the OCGA relating to water rights, so as to remove references to the public trust doctrine, to provide that members of the public have the right to use all navigable streams for passage and for hunting and fishing and for other purposes. Senator Watson of the 11th and others offer the following amendment to amend the Senate Committee on Natural Resources and the Environment substitute to Senate Bill 542 by replacing hunting and fishing on line 23 with hunting or fishing. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the good senator from Colquitt County. Speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do bring Senate Bill 542. This is dealing with our navigable waters. So last session we passed Senate Bill 115, which in the late hour of sine die codified our rights of the public on the use of our navigable streams in the state. That bill was not vetted by this body, and in my personal opinion, it took a lot of our personal property rights away. So basically what we're trying to do in this bill is bring some of those private property rights back. There's been a lot of confusion since the passage of that bill from our landowners and our agricultural community about the impact of this bill. And of course the House has a study committee that met over the summer, and they have a bill that they're bringing forward, and we feel like the Senate needs a version of that bill to continue the conversation and make sure that we have a seat at the table. But we want to protect the landowners, and we want to protect the hunters and the fishers of our state. And so that's what we think we're doing in our bill. It is providing a right for the hunters to hunt, the fishers to fish, and landowners' rights as well. There is a friendly amendment to the bill that I hope you'll accept. We're just changing the "and" to an "or" so that you don't have to be doing both. You could be doing hunting or fishing, and that's what the bill does. It passed out of Natural Resources unanimously with bipartisan support, so I hope we can get this done to protect our natural resources, protect our landowners, and protect our hunters and fishers. I'll be glad to take questions. If there are none, I'll be glad to yield the wheel. Sir? You don't have any?
Senator, you have no, did you speak to the amendment?
I did speak to the amendment.
Okay, all right. You have no questions,
Thank you.
Senator.
Appreciate the support.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question ordered. Taking up Amendment 1, authored by the senator from the 11th, who is the author of the underlying bill. Is there objection to that? Without objection, Amendment 1 is adopted. Questions on the adoption of the committee substitute as amended. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute as amended? Hearing none, the committee substitute as amended is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to a report of committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor vote yea. All those opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 51 and the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Secretary, read caption for SR 542.
Senate Resolution 542, a resolution by Senator Butler of the 55th and others, a resolution encouraging the changing of the minimum age of colorectal cancer screenings and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Health and Human Services recommends that this resolution do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Watson of the 1st District, Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Senator from the 36th, what purpose do you rise?
Thank you, Governor. I'd like to ask for unanimous consent that the senator from the 22nd be excused for business inside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from the 22nd is excused. I recognize the minority leader, senator from the 55th. Speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. I present to you today Senate Resolution 542, which creates a study committee to look into ways to prevent colon cancer in our younger population. According to the U.S. News, Americans in their 20s and 30s are seeing the steepest rise in distant stage CRC. Between 2000 and 2016, their rates rose from 8% to 66%. Black Americans have a 20% higher incidence of colon cancer than non-Hispanic white people and are 40% more likely to die of the disease. I had a couple from Georgia, from Clayton County, that came to me because they lost their daughter at age 29. And I got interested in this issue and looked up a lot of facts about it. The American Cancer Society estimates that there will be 152,810 new cases of colorectal cancer and 53,000 more deaths in the United States during 2024. In 2023, colon cancer was responsible for the second most deaths in the United States out of all cancers. Current Georgia law bases the screening age from the American Cancer Society standards, which are set at age 45. And that just happened a few years ago. The U.S. Preventive Services recommends that average risk adults get regular colon cancer screenings once they turn age 45. But the study committee will look at ways in which we can still lower that age from 45 to a lower number. I don't know what that number is, but hopefully it can be lower than 45. Mr. President, this is my presentation, and I ask the members of this body to give this a yes vote. If there are questions, I'll be happy to answer.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will yield the well.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to rise to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the adoption of the resolution? Chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the adoption of the resolution. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the adoption of the resolution, the yeas are 52, the nays are 0. This resolution have received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Secretary, read Senate Bill 371.
Senate Bill 371, a bill by Senator Strickland of the 17th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 9 of Title 34 of the OCGA relating to general provisions of workers' compensation, to provide for definitions, to amend Article 5 of Chapter 9 of Title 45 of the OCGA relating to law enforcement officers, firemen, prison guards, and publicly employed emergency medical technicians, so as to provide compensation to eligible peace officers from the State Indemnification Fund and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Judiciary recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Strickland of the 17th District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. Bringing you Senate Bill 371. On July 15, 2023, the small town of Hampton in my home county in Henry was rocked by senseless acts of violence from an individual that literally started walking the streets of a quiet subdivision, shooting random individuals. Before he went on the run, 4 innocent people were killed. The following day, Henry County Deputy Corporal Daniel Potziadli located the person responsible for the shootings, and the shooter then decided to open fire on him and 2 other Clayton County officers. Bottom line, as is often the case, as the rest of us locked our doors and kept our families close as the shooter was on the run, law enforcement personnel like Corporal Potziadli went looking for the danger and eliminated it. After being severely injured, nearly losing his life, Corporal Potziadli entered the world of workers' compensation. That meant that while he recovered from his injuries, he only received 66% of his salary. Adding to the stress of losing such a large part of his pay, Corporal Potziadli couldn't work part-time jobs that officers so often find to supplement their pay and support their families. Henry County Sheriff Reginald Scandrett immediately organized a fundraiser to help assist the corporal and his family, and then he picked up the phone and called me and the senator from the 10th and said something has to be done. I joined with my colleague from the 10th, and we drafted and filed Senate Bill 371 in honor of Deputy Potziadli. This bill directs peace officers that have suffered catastrophic injuries in the line of duty while engaging with a criminal suspect to a state fund to cover the remaining portion of their pay not covered by workers' compensation benefits. Senate Bill 371 allows the state to step up and support these peace officers to make sure that while they're home recovering, paying their bills, supporting their family is one less thing they have to worry about. Joining me today on the floor is Henry County Sheriff Reginald Scandrett and Henry County Deputy Corporal Daniel Potziadli. If you will, please help me welcome these gentlemen and thank Corporal Potziadli for his service to the people of this state. Also want to thank members of the Henry County Sheriff's Department that's also with us in the gallery as well. Corporal, go ahead, cheer for them as well. Corporal Potziadli won't benefit from this bill. He recently returned to work and is back at the Sheriff's Office serving the citizens of Henry County. But because of his service and leadership of Sheriff Scandrett, with the passage of this bill, in the event another officer finds himself or herself in a similar situation, they won't have to rely on fundraisers to pay their bills. I again want to thank the senator from the 10th, who's up here as well with me, in joining me in this bipartisan effort to not just send a message of words to our law enforcement community saying we support you, but a message of action that this Senate and hopefully soon our friends across the way in the House will also say that we have your backs. So with that, Mr. President, happy to take any questions. I ask for your support of Senate Bill 371. Thank you.
All right, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you, Corporal, for being here today. Greatly appreciate your service. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. All opposed nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 53, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. I want to thank Senator, Chair, Senator from the 17th. Great work. Senator from the 10th. Sheriff being here. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Corporal and Sheriff, for your service and the sacrifices that you make. And Senators, we appreciate the hard work you did. I know you and the Senator from the 10th have a good working relationship in representing Henry County, and I know we definitely appreciate it and appreciate all y'all's good work there. And we've got the mayor here too, don't we? The mayor, good to see him, and I appreciate everything you do. And y'all know I'm your next door neighbor. I'm just right south of y'all in Butts County. So if y'all need anything from us, y'all just come see us. All right. So thank y'all. Appreciate it. Good to have y'all here today too, and a good bill. Moving on to Senate Bill 390. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 390, a bill by Senator Walker of the 20th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 5 of Title 20 of the OCGA relating to libraries, to amend Chapter 80 and Title 36 of the OCGA relating to provisions applicable to counties, municipal corporations, and other governmental entities and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Government Oversight recommends this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Harbin of the 16th District Chairman. The Senate Committee on Government Oversight offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 390, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 5 of Title 20 of the OCGA relating to libraries so as to prohibit the Board of Regents of the University System of Georgia and city, county, and regional public library trustees from using any taxpayer or privately donated funds, with limited exception, on any materials, services, or operations offered by the American Library Association or any of its affiliates and for other purposes. Senator Walker of the 20th and others offered the following amendment to amend the substitute to Senate Bill 390 by inserting after association on line 32 and by deleting other states have begun reducing the influence of the American Library Association and on lines 33 and 34 by replacing 9 on line 35 with 8 and for other purposes. Additionally, a minority report has been filed. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the distinguished and hardworking senator from Middle Georgia, the senator from the 20th, to speak to SB 390.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, colleagues. I bring to you Senate Bill 390. Before I get into the meat of the bill and we start debate on the bill, I want to tell you that this bill will extricate our local public libraries from the undue influence of the American Library Association. And I want to provide some context for the discussion by sharing some personal perspective. If you've served with me very long, know me very well, you know this is sort of an uncharacteristic bill for me to bring. I generally stick to kitchen table type issues, things that are more practical in nature and don't delve into more of social issues that like this bill does. In fact, in my 9 years, I've never had a minority report written against one of my bills. But I'm trying to bring some Middle Georgia common sense to remedy a problem that I feel like where state government has crept beyond its intended purposes. And some cases, generally I'm trying to work on limited government. If I have a philosophy of live and let live. Generally, if people aren't bothering me, I try not to bother them. And so as somebody that's been around politics quite a while, I usually work on bills championing ag, small business, and entrepreneurs, standing up for the little guy back in the blue, supporting our veterans and their spouses, trying to streamline licensing and limit government, and being a voice for people who need help getting government to be more responsive. Again, like I said, kitchen table issues. So the reason I've gotten involved in this is because of a situation that arose locally where my local library, which is an outstanding library, by the way. We've got a good librarian, we've got a good library board, great facilities, great support from the community. But they applied for a grant from the American Library Association, and of course, as most grants do, it had a lot of strings attached to it. And when I found out about this grant and all the requirements of what you could spend the money on, it really bothered me. So I did a little bit more digging to try to learn about the American Library Association, and was disturbed really by what I learned. They have really an agenda of what they call diversification of the catalog, and the president of the American Library Association, which is a private nonprofit organization, has been a revered organization. It was established in 1876. It's headquartered in Chicago, Illinois. But the current president, Emily Drabinski, is from Brooklyn, New York, and she's a self-described Marxist. So, in digging and learning about the American Library Association, I want to make note of two important things. It's a private organization. It's not a government entity. It's a private nonprofit organization, and it derives its authority from a monopoly on the accreditation of library degree programs throughout the country. Gets a lot of its revenue through obviously dues from members and the accreditation fees they charge, and then continuing ed services and that kind of thing. The minority report talks about, well, the current president, her term's up at the end of June. But I looked at the executive officers of the organization, there's 4 of them, and 2 of them are from California. She's from New York, and one's from Missouri. Also, the members obviously elected this lady, so the membership elected this self-proclaimed Marxist to lead their organization. So I don't think this is an issue with just one person. This is a systemic issue with the whole organization. So prior to taking on this issue, I put libraries in the same category really as mom and apple pie. And I was shocked to find that the havens for learning that I envisioned, where children's imaginations could run free and young people could find inspiration for their future, and the legacy of knowledge accumulated by our civil society can be freely accessed, have become a political battleground for a radical agenda pushed down by this Chicago organization, the American Library Association. So as a duly elected representative and a policymaker, I feel like I've got a duty to my citizens, because their agenda and their politics that they've inserted into this don't match with conservative Georgia values or the Georgia values of my district. And again, they're the ones that inserted politics into the libraries, not me. I didn't start this fight, but I'm not going to back down from it when it comes to protecting our children and our families and our Georgia values. So this bill is designed to prohibit taxpayer dollars from funding political extremism mandated by a private institution that deserves no more authority than it earns. By cutting off the necessity to pay homage to the American Library Association through accreditation, we're empowering our local librarians and communities to determine locally what material they want to make available in their library. In the process, we can join other states in sending a message to the wannabe social engineers of the ALA: get out of the ideology business and get back to your original mission. I want to tell you that I have gotten a lot of feedback from librarians. And I've made some significant changes to the bill to working with Julie Walker, who is the state librarian. We are leaving in, the initial bill took out the certification requirements for librarians. This bill leaves that in there. We also made an accommodation for Valdosta State University, who is the only unit of the university system of Georgia that offers the Master's in Library Sciences degree, to allow them to continue to get their accreditation through ALA until another accrediting body is stood up, but they will have to use private funds to do that. But with those changes, Valdosta State University is fine with the bill, and also the state librarian is now fine with the bill. And I again want to stress how much respect and appreciation I have for our librarians and their professionalism and how important they are to our communities. So this is not an attack on librarians. It doesn't ban any books. It doesn't prevent any librarians that want to continue to be a member of the American Library Association from doing so. They will just have to do it on their own dime and not taxpayer dollars. Quickly running through the bill, Section 1 is the legislative finding. Section 2 is the Board of Regents section. The library system is under the Board of Regents, as you probably know. And if you look at lines 54 through 56, that is the exception we put in there to allow Valdosta State University to continue to be an accredited degree program. Section 3 deals with city libraries, prohibiting them from using public funds to sending that to the ALA. Section 4 is your county and regional library boards, again prohibiting them from using tax dollars for membership fees or dues. And Section 5 moves the certification from the state board to the Georgia Council of Public Libraries. So we're going to repeal the state board for the certification of librarians effective July 1, 2025. So we will no longer have that state board under the Secretary of State's Professional and Occupational Licensing Board, and the certification will be handled by the Georgia Council of Public Libraries. So we're reducing the size of government, and by doing that, we're going to save the librarians their $75 licensing fee that they're currently having to pay, because the Georgia Council of Public Libraries is not going to charge a fee. Section 6 makes it clear that librarians continue to have to be certified, but it'll now be certified by the Georgia Council of Public Libraries. Section 7 is just really a blanket prohibition from any public money going to the ALA. And Section 8 repeals the state board for the certification of librarians and replaces it with the Georgia Council of Public Libraries. Line 1, let's see, getting down to line 179, it makes it continue to be a requirement that if you're going to use the title of librarian, and work in a library, you have to have a librarian certificate, as I've already said. But it'll be by the Georgia Council of Public Libraries, and they have to have a degree to have that certification. But the degree will no longer be tied to a accreditation by the American Library Association. So that's what the bill does. And if you don't mind, Mr. President, I'll go ahead and address the amendment. We realized we had several different drafts of this, and we overlooked a couple things in the last draft. So the amendment simply corrects where on line 33 and 34 we were basically we had the same sentence in there twice, so we're correcting that. And then on line 94 and 95, we did not mean to strike the director shall be appointed by the Board of Trustees. That means your local library director is appointed by your local library board. We did not mean to strike that sentence, so we're restoring that sentence. So that's the bill, Mr. President. I'll be happy to yield for any questions.
Senator, you do have a few questions. If the chair recognizes the senator from the 37th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Had a meeting a couple years ago with one of the representatives of this organization. I was talking about some very troubling material in libraries and asked, about shouldn't the public have knowledge, at least transparency about what's on the shelves? And this person told me no, that they were a trained professional. It was their job and expertise to pick things in libraries, and that not only parents in public schools, but the public had no business knowing what was on the shelves of their libraries. If that's true, and I remember that distinctly, isn't it true that SB 390 would be a good response to that kind of circumstance and that kind of philosophy?
Yes, sir, I would agree with that, because you've got this outside entity out of Chicago trying to unduly influence the type of material that is in our local libraries. So this will help in that regard.
And isn't it true to the gentleman that if an entity believes the public has no right to know full transparency what's on the shelves of their libraries, that they alone should know, that is not consistent with a good government?
I don't think that's consistent with good government or where Georgia is and Georgia values.
Thank you, sir.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 41st for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Chairman, do you yield?
Yes, ma'am.
So could you help me understand, if this bill were passed, would a local library be able to apply for grants from the ALA?
No.
So can you therefore, if you would mind looking at the bill, I think I need some help with interpreting lines 126 through 131. I think specifically looking at line 129, where it begins with except that privately donated funds may be provided to such association for the sole purpose of supporting an application of accreditation or reaccreditation of a degree program. So does this mean that you can continue, private dollars can continue to pay for the accreditation, but all ALA services, grants, free money that the ALL offers, none of that would be usable in the Georgia librarian system?
Well, they wouldn't be. So your libraries would not be a member any longer of the American Library Association unless they're going to, so no, they wouldn't be a member, so they wouldn't be eligible for grants.
But if an individual library, do you further yield?
Yes.
So if an individual librarian pays with personal money the dues to the ALA, would he or she be able to apply for a grant for their library to receive ALA funds to support their library? Would that be permissible under this law?
So your librarians individually can be a member.
Right.
And they would pay, that's their First Amendment right to be a member. But the libraries themselves would not be able to use public funds or privately donated funds to pay membership dues. So they would not be able to be a member of the American Library Association under this bill. Now I would not think that ALA would offer any grants to libraries that aren't a member.
Thank you.
The chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
In the name of transparency, do you still have a library card? And if so, do you have any outstanding fees? And would this bill, if it passed, prevent you from checking out your favorite book?
I was going to show you my library card, but no, I'm not aware of any outstanding fees. Good question, though. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 36th for a question.
Thank you very much. Does the gentleman yield?
I do, to my good friend from DeKalb.
Actually, Fulton.
Fulton, okay, sorry.
To the gentleman from Warner Robins and regions thereof. If I understood your explanation a second ago, I don't want to misconstrue it. Did you say that the bill prohibits expenditure of public or private funds to be a part of the American Library Association?
With the one exception for the accreditation of a degree program. Private funds for the fees required to get an accreditation for a degree program. So Valdosta State, their master's program is accredited by the ALA. They can use their foundation money to pay for that accreditation.
Further question, if you'll yield.
Yes, ma'am.
So it's private money when a librarian chooses, as the senator from the 41st was asking, chooses to use their own money to be a member of the American Library Association. I would believe they have individual memberships as well as library memberships.
And they could continue to do that.
And they can continue to do that, even though that's a
And
private.
I think some of them are doing that anyway now. I don't know that all library systems pay the dues for their librarians. Some do and some don't, I would imagine. But we can't prevent them from, being a member if they want to be.
Further question, Senator, have you thought, looking forward into the future, if you will, of the kind of national headlines? Georgia bans libraries from being a member of the American Library Association. Has it occurred to you about the kind of negative national publicity or black eye, if you will, that passing this kinds of legislation could, negative attention it could bring to Georgia? Where we have some flagship universities, institutions of higher education that can hold a candle to anybody, anywhere. We have so much to be proud of with our higher education and the goals that we aspire to and the direction we're going in. Does this not give Georgia, doesn't it cast a pall over our reputation as a state committed to learning?
I appreciate the question, and as I said earlier, I don't bring this bill lightly, to my good friend. I don't normally weigh in on this kind of thing, but this has gone too far, and I think who ought to think twice about this is the American Library Association. They're the ones that are trying to push a radical, socialist, extreme agenda to our local libraries. They're the ones that started this, not us. They're the ones that are going to lose membership. We already are seeing about 8 other states take similar measures, and I think they're the ones that are going to need to read the headlines, that this isn't their role to be meddling in politics and in a radical, socialist agenda in our local libraries. And they need to back off, get back to their core mission, and maybe we can revisit this idea of being affiliated with them. But under their current leadership and the current direction they're going, Georgians don't want this.
It's true. Isn't it true? You did not say what your librarians were concerned about when they interfaced with the ALA and what was being required of them. So that hadn't been made very clear, I don't think.
So I got calls from librarians and emails from all over the state. Some of them were already retired and they had fond memories of the ALA and a real affection for the ALA.
Exactly.
Some were appalled by what the ALA is doing and were do not agree with ALA. The main thing I heard from the librarians was we want to retain our certification. We value the professionalism of the career that we're in, and we don't want to see that deteriorated or undermined. And that's really mostly what I heard from librarians was about the education requirement to be a librarian and the certification. But I did hear from both sides. Some thought the ALA was great.
Exactly.
The majority didn't. The majority of the ones I heard from, honestly, did not approve of the politics and the direction of the ALA. Most of our Georgia librarians are really pretty apolitical people, seem like to me.
Thank you for responding to my questions.
Thank you. All right, Mr. President, I'll yield the well. Thank you.
Senator, very good. Did you speak to your amendment, Senator? Okay, very good. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Forgive me. All right. The chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd. Senator, will you be presenting the minority report? Very good. Thank you.
I rise to address the report of the minority from the committee that passed this legislation. And of course, our good friend, the senator from the 20th, said earlier that he's never had a minority report filed on a bill of his, to which I say there is a first time for everything. And we certainly do appreciate the senator's good work on other bills that are a good public policy. This one, we do have some disagreement. So as we've been discussing, SB 390 would prohibit any public dollars and some privately donated funds for purchasing materials offered by the American Library Association or providing gifts to the ALA. So I want to break down, just for a few moments, what this means for libraries and librarians in a state that ranks among the lowest in the country in literacy rates. 42nd to be exact. When a state's literacy rates are in the bottom 10 in the nation, spending a lot of time and elected official capital on strictly regulating libraries and librarians is not the wisest tactic. In fact, we should really be spending our time encouraging more librarians and access to libraries and books. Bills like SB 390 appear to basically be a knee-jerk response in the current loudest culture war. Again, as the senator from the 20th alluded to, the bill is based in large part on the majority party's disagreement with the current ALA president's personal politics. That issue will be moot by the time SB 390 takes effect in July 2025. The ALA president serves a one-year term, and it will expire in July, the same month that this legislation would take effect. The American Library Association is the premier provider of materials for the nation's libraries, and their mission, their publicly stated mission, is to provide leadership for the development, promotion, and improvement of library and information services and the profession of librarianship in order to enhance learning and ensure access to information for all. In addition, libraries provide information needs for their communities in ways that serve the needs of communities all across the state and country. I want to share with you a couple of other important statistics that I came across when researching this bill before we went to committee regarding the importance of libraries and reading. Data from more than 34 statewide studies suggests that students tend to earn better standardized test scores in schools with strong library programs. Other studies have demonstrated that strong school libraries are linked to important indicators of student success, such as increased graduation rates and mastery of academic standards, regardless of a school's wealth. It has been found over and over again that the benefits associated with a strong library program in a school are the strongest for lower income learners, at-risk learners, including students of color, low-income students, and students with disabilities. Students with full-time certified librarians were almost 3 times more likely than those without librarians to have advanced writing scores. In a 2015 Washington State study, the presence of a certified school librarian was predictive of higher elementary and middle school math scores. The study ranked school library programs and found that one key factor distinguishing high-performing, high-poverty schools from low-performing, high-poverty schools is a quality library program. And unfortunately, instead of regarding all of this important research that's been done on how critical reading is for our youth to succeed in life, SB 390 puts librarians on the front lines of a culture war when all they want to do is be educators. I really, colleagues, do find it deeply ironic that in a state where 2/3 of kids cannot read on grade level, that we have so many more bills addressing what children should or should not be able to read, instead of focusing on the actual 5-alarm fire problem, the problem that many of them cannot read well, if at all. That is the problem that we should be discussing today. That is the money we should be discussing putting into our budget. The problem is, how does this even matter when 2/3 of Georgia's kids can't read well anyway? Why are we not talking about that today, colleagues? In their opposition to SB 390, the Georgia Library Association stated, Georgians are facing more and more complex information decisions every day, from locating trustworthy information to understanding artificial intelligence, to routine assistance with online applications, schooling, and technology. Our libraries and our archives serve the information needs of millions of Georgians. So undermining the American Library Association, which the author did note, many librarians pushed back on the notion that their certification would be removed or undermined, especially going forward with students who seek to become librarians now. They said, don't lessen our certification. Don't lessen our professionalism. Well, why is there a professionalism in this profession? Because of the work that the American Library Association has done for decades and decades. It is detrimental to the many citizens of this state who use and rely on libraries to enrich their lives, to allow a statement made by a temporary, term-limited president to have such sweeping, far-reaching consequences on the ability of Georgians to uplift the importance of reading and education and libraries in their everyday lives. Thank you, Mr. President. I urge a no vote on this bill. If there are any questions, I shall take them. If not, I will yield the will.
You have no questions, sir.
Okay, thank you. Happy to answer.
Recognize the senator from the 30. Senator, you have no questions. I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
Recognize the senator from the 36.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I rise to speak against this committee sub of Senate Bill 390. I'll share a story. As a child, my highest aspiration was to be a librarian. A house we moved into had an old lawyer's desk down in the basement with those little slots where you put things in, and I created my own little library down there and made out the little slips, put them in the little, and I checked out books for my other 4 siblings, as well as kids in the neighborhood. And I just thought that nothing could be finer than to spend one's life in a library, dispensing books, counseling those readers who came and asked for any guidance on what's on the shelves, and talking with them as they returned their books to see how they liked them. That was what I truly thought I would become, and somehow I wound up in the lowly Senate instead. I don't know, but I've never lost my love of libraries. Many of you share, I know, that special feeling when you walk into a library and you just feel you're in, a field of riches. The world is at your footsteps, it is spread out in front of you in those library shelves. I have that feeling every time I enter a library, and I'll bet you a lot of y'all know exactly what I'm talking about. And so for us to put libraries chock-a-block and librarians in the midst of cultural wars is just, to me, lamentable. Not where we want to go. Do we want to actually plant seedlings across our state that you got to watch out for these evil librarians? You got to look at, you got to worry about what books are in there. You really can't trust them. Maybe you don't even want to drop your kids off at the library. That should not be the direction that we're going in. And it seems that the majority party here has latched onto this, and it's going to be voted on, and people will cast their votes, and a lot of librarians' hearts will be crushed at this sort of interference, and this profiling of libraries is somehow a source of dangerous ideas. It's really, we've seen it before in society. Fear of libraries is not a new thing. Fear of ideas, fear of different ways of looking at the world, different perspectives, all of those opportunities that you can get on the shelves of a library. It's not a new phenomenon, but it's a lamentable phenomenon. And I joined with the senator who just presented the minority report and asking you to let's don't go down this road. I'll close with a quote from somebody that whose profile stands tall in American history, and that would be former President Ronald Reagan. He notably said, "So long as books are kept open, then minds can never be closed." Think about that as you cast this vote. If there are no questions, I'll yield the well.
You have no questions, Senator. Senator from 29th.
Thank you, Mr. President. There are days when we're in this chamber and I really don't know, because I know what a flawed human being I am, that I really don't know what I have in common with some of my colleagues in here. But today, in this particular issue, I do find commonalities. I agree with the senator from the 36th and the senator from the 42nd, because growing up as a young boy, there was the place where I found the most peace, the place where I found connectivity, being the only boy in my family, had an older sister and a younger sister, still have an older sister and a younger sister, but was in the library. As I've said before, I remember in the 2nd and 3rd grade, I would go to the library every day when we were given an opportunity to do that, sometimes surrendering recess time to go to the library. I would put on these giant, just enormous headphones plug this big jack into a record player. For those of you who don't know, it's like a large black CD. And I would listen to Peter, Paul, and Mary and Puff the Magic Dragon every single day. And while I did it, I had a book. And I would read these books. And I had a mother and father who both loved to read. My mother was an incredible writer. And my family practiced corporal punishment when I was wrong, but usually there was a cherry on top. I would get a spanking, and my mother and father would pick out which book I had to read. And sometimes they would go in my sister's room and pick out one of her books, knowing I did not want to read anything my sisters were interested in. But I fell in love with books. And I started buying books, and I go to bookstores, and for Valentine's Day this year, my wife hands me my gift, and I open it up, and it's a first edition, second printing of Old Man in the Sea with a dust jacket from Ernest Hemingway. And beautiful cover, rich colors, and all of this, because my wife understands my love of books. When the stacks in our house got downstairs in our house got to be too much, she said, Randy, you've got to purge some of these books. So like any good husband, I did what my wife told me. And I went down and got rid of about 200 books, which leaves me with a little over 1,800 books in my house. I do not have a library. I have my books. But I have 3 library cards. I go to the library in Columbus, I go to the library in Harris County, and I go to the library in Troop. And I was proud to be a part of a team that was able to bring $3 million along with the senator from the 28th. We were able to bring $3 million into Troop County and build a new library. And I'm extremely proud of that. And there's times when I want to get away from my house, and I go find me one of the rooms at the library, and I sit in there and do my senatorial calls and my senatorial work. And I have 1,800 books at home, and I leave the library by buying books from the used book part of the library and by checking out books when I already have books at home that I still need to read. I love the library and I love books. And when the senator from the 20th came into my office one day and we were talking, he mentioned this legislation. When I saw him about 3 or 4 days later, I wasn't really kind to him because he sent me down a rabbit hole unexpectedly because I started looking at the ALA. Billy Joel put out a song many years ago that talked about we didn't start this fire. This fire wasn't started by the current ALA president. This fire was started a long time ago. This fire was started back in the 60s when the ALA saw an opportunity to get their message, not their original message that they had back in the 1800s, but the new message they adopted because of one thing, because they didn't like the Vietnam War. And as the war was winding down, they had to find a new message in order to continue raising funds. And their new message was a message of Marxism and a message of socialism. And they do what anything else does. They don't go in through the front door, they don't go in through the back door. They crack a window and they slowly start putting the poison into the house. And what they did is they started poisoning something that I love. I love today. And that's our libraries. And that's our public libraries. The libraries that are supported by our tax dollars. And what the senator has done is he has got legislation that if it does not prevent one single citizen in this state from donating money to a library. And I encourage everybody in this room, if you are not donating to your local library, please do, because they need your money. But what they do not need is they do not need a Marxist and socialist organization infecting such an incredible institution. The reason our literacy rates are so high has nothing to do with this legislation. The reason our literacy rate issues are what they are and we're ranked where we are is because we as parents, we as leaders have not done enough to put books in the hands of our children. Our children walk around with a cell phone in their hand all day as opposed to a book. And I'm going to tell you, books are much better than cell phones. I applaud the senator from the 20th for what he is doing, because when he got up here, he spoke the absolute truth. When we first started talking about this, I could have named 5 other senators that I thought would have brought something like this forward. This is a man of integrity. It's a man of compassion. It's a man that does not walk around this building looking for a fight. He looks to serve the people in his district. And what he's doing with this bill goes beyond that. He is serving not only every man and woman in the state of Georgia, but he is serving every child so that they have the opportunity to go in a safe community, get a book of their choice, read it, make up their own mind without their librarians and without the people that work there being held hostage by a group saying, we will give you money if you promote our socialist agenda. And for that, I applaud the senator from the 20th, and I ask everyone in here to please vote green on this legislation. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
The senator has yielded. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? All right, so with no objections to the previous question, senator from the 20th, would you like to close? You're good, you waive. We had a minority report that was read, and I think the senator from the 42nd spoke to that. Okay, she says she did. So we're at a posture where we're taking up Amendment 1, authored by the senator from the 20th. Is there objection to Amendment 1? Without objection, Amendment 1 is adopted. The question is on the adoption of the committee of substitute as amended. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute as amended? Hearing none, the committee substitute as amended is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor will vote yea. All opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 33, the nays are 20. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Secretary reads Senate Bill 460.
Senate Bill 460, a bill by Senator Dixon of the 45th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 34 of Title 43 of the OCGA relating to physicians, acupuncture, physician assistants, cancer and glaucoma treatment, respiratory care, clinical professionists, and orthotics and prosthetics practice so as to revise provisions relating to the number of advanced practice registered nurses and physician assistants that a physician can authorize and supervise at any one time and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Health and Human Services recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Watson of the 1st District Chairman. Senator Brass and others offer the following amendment to amend Senate Bill 460 by replacing lines 1 through 3 with the following. To amend chapters 26 and 34 of Title 43 of the OCGA relating to nurses and physicians, acupuncture, physician assistants, cancer and glaucoma treatment, respiratory care, and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from the 45th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 460, very simple bill. Currently, a physician can have 4 APRNs and 4 PAs in a practice and no more of each, a total of 8. Doesn't change the total of 8. It just allows them to have flexibility where they could have 6 PAs and 2 APRNs or vice versa. There's no questions, I'll yield the well, Mr. President.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you.
Recognize the senator from the 1st. Speaks, sir. Oh. Yes, you want to wait until after he speaks about the amendment? Okay, that's fine. Hey, that's fine. I'll call on you after the amendment. Is that what you want? All right, I recognize the senator from the 28th who has offered amendment number 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. As many of y'all know, I used to work for Congressman Lynn Westmoreland, and sitting in my office on the wall where I shared an office with the senator from the 29th's wife, I had a list of quotes. And one of those quotes was from the Dalai Lama himself, and it said, "If you can, help others. If you cannot do that, at least do not harm them." And I bring up that quote for a very important reason, and this amendment is part of that reason. Currently, we have around 52 rural hospitals that qualify for the rural hospital tax credit. Of those 52, 27, and I repeat, 27 do not have an anesthesiologist in that hospital. Of the 25 hospitals of that 52 that do have anesthesiologists, 10 are not enrolled in Medicare and Medicaid or Peach Care. So that's a total of 35 anesthesiologists in those 10 hospitals. Now, what this bill does, or what this amendment does, is it simply says if you're in a rural hospital that qualifies for the rural hospital tax credit, that we are simply going to shift the responsibility from the doctor that a CRNA practices under, we're shifting it from that doctor to that CRNA. That is all we're doing, and we're only doing it in 52 hospitals that qualify for the rural hospital tax credit, should that hospital allow it. Their rules and their regs and their setup, if they want anesthesiologists to direct it, they can still do that. You've got 25 that would fall under that. And you're going to hear opposition today, and you've probably already heard it from the hallways, that it's going to create a secondary level of care. That CRNAs are not as trained as anesthesiologists. And you know what? I'm not even going to argue that. But if that's the case, we currently have 27 hospitals in this state that are already under that secondary level of care. And what makes it worse is if we're operating under that secondary level of care, we have 35 anesthesiologists that say if you're insured, then you deserve the best care. But if you're under Medicaid, you deserve secondary level of care. That is what those stats say. And I don't care what comes down here. This is not the same bill we had in committee. That bill was statewide. I have taken it down to 52 hospitals under the rural hospital tax credit that simply shifts that responsibility to the CRNA, who carries the exact same insurance as that doctor. Exact same insurance. And that's all we're doing. And so what does this do? It helps with the recruitment of doctors in our rural areas. We had we had a prison that could not renew a contract to do surgeries because they couldn't get an anesthesiologist in there, and the doctors did not want to assume responsibility and liability of the anesthesia. So this is to help that type of situation. This is already here. It's already happening. We're simply trying to make it better, and that's all I am trying to do. And so our doctors, our anesthesiologists, 27 hospitals are asking for your help, and you can't provide it. And that's fine. I get it. But just quit harming them. Atlanta doctors, we're asking for help in these areas. And if you can't help, just quit harming it. Senators, I'm asking for your help. And if you can't help, just don't harm it. Just stay out of the way. Y'all, this is long overdue. This is long, long overdue. I'll yield for questions.
You have no questions, Senator?
Thank you.
Recognize the senator from the 1st.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm here to talk about the amendment. The underlying bill is a good bill. It came through Health and Human Services. It basically allows the 8 advanced practice nurses or PAs to do in different multiples. Instead of 4 and 4, it can go 2 and 6 and so forth. The amendment, though, on the other hand, I would ask you to defeat. Vote for the underlying bill and defeat the amendment. And basically, if you want to talk about what actually happens in those 27 hospitals, the general surgeon signs off on the CRNA, right? The CRNA cannot prescribe those drugs or anesthetics. They are not trained to prescribe those drugs and anesthetics. They have to have a physician there. The general surgeon is in the room, and that is what he does. So don't say that it's not an issue relating to liability or relating to unburdening somebody from liability. Listen, if they're still not signing off on it and the general surgeon is there, they're all going to be named for that matter. And don't say it's urban versus rural, because you don't want where you're having lesser care. Some would say lesser care. They're certainly less trained, whether you're an anesthesia assistant, which, by the way, are not asking for this independent care, are not asking to expand their scope. So if you're looking for quality, you should continue to maintain a physician who's in the room and the CRNA working as a team, because the physician signs off on the drugs and is responsible ultimately for that patient. Let me just tell you what we did in Health and Human Services. For 2 years, we've discussed this issue. We had testimony last year, both sides, and it was defeated. We had legislation this year. A couple of words changed, not significantly, and it went down again. And actually went down again on reconsideration. So, from my perspective, you've heard me say many times in the Health and Human Services Committee that if we drive quality we drive price, and that is true. Higher quality, the better value you're going to get. You're going to have less complications and so forth. Again, fully vetted in our committee and was defeated. As a matter of fact, the sponsors of the bill told me that afterwards we were very fair relating to the vetting of that bill from both sides, pro and con. Mr. President, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
You do have a couple questions, Senator. Recognize the Senator from the 55th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
Yes, ma'am. To the
Senator, is it not true that you just stated and gave the answer to the question that I was going to ask you about how many times this bill has been in Health and Human Services and that I have been a member of that committee for those years?
The lady knows what she speaks. Thank you, Leader.
And is it not further true that just last week the bill failed, it was reconsidered, and it failed, and the failed motion still stood?
It did, and thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you.
I recognize the Senator from the 32nd.
Thank you. Senator, do you yield?
I do.
I have a question for you about the language in the amendment where it says duly licensed physician or podiatrist. Is it your understanding that the amendment is not specific to whether that person has to be in Georgia, whether they have to be on site, or whether they could be in a remote location?
You're right. It's not clear. Again, it's a quality issue. You want the physician in the room signing off on those anesthetics, or maybe has privileges at that hospital, but is in the adjoining state or wherever. You just don't know. Canada, it is unclear. You're correct.
And would you yield for one more question?
Yes.
With the wording in the bill, it says licensed physician or podiatrist. Is it possible with this language that a podiatrist that's not on site could give an order for a heart surgery, for example?
Well, I mean, yes, that is, your question is true, but presumably CRNAs are not going to be doing this independently for heart surgery. I mean, that is what the example of the person in the prison. The physician wouldn't do it with a CRNA because it was a complicated case. Complicated cases should not be done without a more controlled environment. Again, physician there with the CRNA, teamwork.
And could you yield for one more question, Senator?
Yes.
Is it not true that I spent my whole career doing surgery in the operating room?
I'm sorry, repeat that, please?
Is it not true that I spent my career doing surgery?
Well, I'm glad you repeated that because, I didn't hear it the first time, but you drive the point home. I mean, listen, you're the one who's been in the operating room. You're the one who's been signing off at times for the CRNA. You're the one responsible for that patient. You're the one who gets sued if something goes wrong. Yes, you know from perfectly years and years of experience of what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have another question. I recognize the Senator from the 28th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, do you yield?
I do.
Senator, is the amendment the same bill that was in committee?
The amendment is like the two previous visits that we have had on this particular issue. Last year it was different. It was a little different this time, and it's a little different this time last week, and a little different now.
Will you further yield?
Yes.
Did either of those other two bills specifically ask for this in rural hospital settings?
We had discussed that.
Did either of the bills do
when
that?
we came down to voting, that was not considered. No.
Okay, thank you. And if you'll yield for one last question.
Certainly.
You had mentioned expanding scope of practice, which the scope of practice for CRNAs is laid out in code. This does not touch that. Can you kind of explain how you think this You know, because they're, as you know, and we all know, that they don't have prescription writing authority, nor do they want it. So can you just kind of explain how you think this
It releases,
expands their scope?
I'd be happy to. It releases the supervision of a physician who's in that room. I'll be happy to answer any other questions.
You have no further questions.
Thank you. Again, the underlying bill I think is good. The amendment, I would ask that you defeat it. It has been fully vetted in HHS last year and again this year. Thank you.
Recognize Senator from the 50th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today I rise in favor of the amendment from the Senator from the 28th. One of the reasons that I rise in favor of this is because it specifically lays out the distinction for rural hospitals. In my neck of the woods, we had a hospital that was in operation for longer than I was alive, as long as most people can remember. And recently it had to shut down. Luckily, it was taken over by a larger hospital. But one of the reasons why they had to shut down was because they had a limited number of services they could provide. And it was because they had a very hard time recruiting physicians to come in and provide specialty surgical services. One of the reasons for that is because we did not have anesthesiologists. My dad is an OBGYN in Habersham County, had been practicing for 30 years, and not one time in his entire 30-year career has he ever seen an anesthesiologist set foot inside Habersham County Medical Center. Not once. It was stated in committee, would you trust your family, your loved ones with the care of a CRNA? Yes. My wife has had 4 C-sections. I have 4 healthy babies. Every time she had a C-section, it was delivered by a CRNA. I understand that there is a difference in opinion as to what this bill does. What I see this bill do is it gives rural hospitals that are struggling right now the chance to survive and make money in this medical climate. If you allow them to do this, they will be able to recruit more doctors and provide more services in rural areas. And Mr. President, I'm happy to answer any questions. If there are none, I'll yield the well.
You do have a couple questions, Senator. Recognize Senator from the 41st.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Chairman, do you yield?
I do.
Senator, is it true that we served on a study committee over the course of the interim in which we looked at various issues as it relates to rural health care and the needs of getting rural health care workers to Georgia?
That is true.
Do you further yield?
I do.
And is it not true that in the course of our studies that we discovered that providing this type of amendment could assist CRNAs and ultimately all Georgians in rural areas with getting access to the care that they need?
The Senator knows what she speaks.
Do you further yield?
I do.
And is it not further true that our number one recommendation on that study committee report was that we take action to ensure that our CRNAs can work in rural Georgia and continue to expand access to health care for rural Georgians?
Yes, that is true, and that's why I think this amendment is such a well-balanced amendment, because it is only going to impact the rural areas of the state. We're not looking to open up negotiations for contracts for anesthesiologists in bigger areas or bigger cities with bigger hospitals. This is for rural hospitals to help them survive in a medical climate that is very difficult to survive in right now. And with that, Mr. President, if there are no more questions, I'll yield the
You
floor.
do have a couple more questions, Senator,
All right.
but you can yield at any time.
I'll go ahead and yield. Thank you.
Senator's yielded. Does any senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Without objection, sir? We're coming to it, Senator. We're coming to it. The senator, I asked the senator from the 45th who I guess this is still the author of this bill. Would you like to close debate? No, than that. All right. All right. So we're here with the amendment number 1, authored by the senator from the 28th. Is there objection to amendment number 1? There is objection for amendment number 1. All those in favor of the amendment will vote yea. All opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. Senator from the 2nd, for what purpose do you rise?
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. President.
State your inquiry.
Mr. President, is it not true that doctors don't walk in, they show up on FaceTime too?
Say it again, Senator.
I said, Mr. President, is it not true that you don't have to have the doctor at the hospital? Sometimes they just FaceTime and they'll bring the phone to you. You talk to them on FaceTime.
I don't even have a doctor in my hometown, so I don't know. Senator from the 20th, for what purpose do you rise?
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. President.
State your inquiry.
It is not true that over 80 counties don't have an anesthesiologist, and a yes vote would allow rural hospitals to continue offering specialty surgery and possibly stay open, otherwise they may have to close.
Senator is passionate about what he says. Senator from the 32nd, for what purpose do you rise? On the adoption of Amendment 1, the yeas are 30 and the nays are 23, and this amendment has been adopted. All right. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill as amended. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 40 and the nays are 11. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed as amended. I do want to take the time to recognize the lovely bride of the senator from the 17th, Miss Lindsay Perdue, back there in the back. Recognize the senator. I saw the majority leader's wife there in the gallery, Miss Shannon Gooch, up there. So give her a round of applause. So glad to have both you ladies here, and always. All the family members are always welcome here to the Senate chambers, especially on long days like what we have today. All right, moving on. Senate Bill 454. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 454, a bill by Senator Strickland of the 17th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 6 of Title 19 of the OCGA relating to alimony and child support, so as to provide for guidelines for child support, award calculations, and other purposes. The Senate Committee on Judiciary recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Strickland of the 17th District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Should I be nervous? My wife came to watch me present a bill about child support and alimony. I bring you Senate Bill 454. This comes from our Georgia Child Support Commission that has a bunch of expert judges and family law lawyers run the state. Plus, they let me and the senator from the 10th serve on this commission. And this isn't, yeah, we do hang out together a lot. This group has recommended some changes based on economic study they're required to do by federal law to update our child support tables and also to create some uniformity as to how we handle parenting time deviations and also low-income deviations. So the bill will keep us in federal compliance and give some much long overdue updates to our child support laws in our state. Happy to answer any questions, Mr. President.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. Previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. All those opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, yeas are 52, the nays are 0. This bill, having received requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. As the majority leader for a motion.
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
It appears the Senate is working much faster than the House. Would it be possible to take a little break?
You know, you took the thought right out of my mind there, Senator.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we move to table the remaining bills on the calendar.
All right, the majority leader has moved that we table the remaining bills on the table and take a little break for get a little refresh air outside. Senator from the night said she wanted to go for a walk. So, all right, is there objection to that? And without objection, remaining bills are tabled. All right, let's take a little break. We'll stand in recess for about 30 minutes or so.